What are connections, relationships, and networks? Hi, I'm John. Welcome to Philosopher's Corner. What are connections, relationships, and networks? And they're related. Spoiler alert. What are connections? So, connections in the material world are any the hate to be circular and say like connections are connections, but they kind of are. Connections are those things that we're all links in a chain of causation. All of existence is a series of interconnected links of causation, and a connection is that link. And a connection occurs whether we're conscious of it or not. So, me walking around, gravity is a connection, breathing air is a connection, having electromagnetic resonance with my reality is a connection. Any interaction with reality is a connection in the external world. That's just for starters. So, internally, we also have a ton of connections. We have internal connections within ourselves. We have cells interacting with cells. We have organs working with organs. We have connections to our internal life, to our energies and soul. So there's connections on connections, and those internal connections lead into other connections that enable the internal connections allow for us to have external connections in the material world. Basically allows us to plug into the material world of causation. And if we view the world and we strip away our normal preconception of it and we just see it as a huge, let's say, a sphere of just different links of causation, and then we see that we didn't exist in it and now we're going to exist in it, and we're going to be put in a place of a link within this like pre-existing sphere of links of causation, and we're going to be put in, and then we can see that new connections, we're going to be introduced into this ecosystem of connections, and that of these links, and that our links are going to occur, and we're going to be linked into these other links from a point at which we weren't before. Like we did exist, and now we're going to exist in these links, and then we can see as our development occurs, the connections are put in, that our links all around into the sphere of causation, the sphere of the links of causation, cause and effect, our connections are also made as we become manifest in that ecosystem, in that world, in this world. And so the connections start to happen. The links are born and they happen. And in the material realm, they can take nearly any form: breathing oxygen, saying hello to somebody, the force of gravity, anything that creates a link of causation, of cause and effect, which is essentially everything, is a connection, conscious or unconscious. And the way I see it, it goes from a connection to a relationship when the practitioner, the conscious being, becomes conscious of the connection. That begins a relationship. That changes it from essentially an unconscious connection, although I do think that you can have some slightly conscious connections that don't rise to relationships. But if you put enough energy and attention and consciousness onto the nature of a connection, then it can become a relationship. Because at that point, let's say you have an unconscious connection with the air you breathe, and then at some point in your evolution, you become conscious of the nature of air quality, how it affects your body, how if you breathe it in different ways, it can affect your body different ways and give you different performances. Um, how it actually, different types of air interact with your body or your different activities, right? Like Olympic athletes, they found, for a long time, they've been training at high altitudes because it catalyzes the higher capacity for their blood to carry. It forces the blood to figure out how to carry more oxygen when they go back to normal levels. They have an advantage because they've like altered the chemistry of their blood just through being aware of their relationship with the air, right? So the relationship becomes when you become conscious of the connections that one has, and how one conducts that relationship completely varies. Also, it's not a one-way street. So you can have relationships with anything because what we say is an inanimate object. Nothing's really inanimate, but I'll get into that later. But with an object that has less discernible consciousness and animation versus being in like taking a connection with another human being who's also aware, and when you both start to value the connection that you have, that's traditionally what we call a relationship, is when a human being, another human being in this case, become aware of their connection, and then it becomes a relationship. And they can be aware of it for whatever reason. It can be a transactional thing. It can just be, oh well, you're a person you work at the store I like, and I like to have good service, and we keep it polite, and so this relationship is like that. Or it could be, I've met my significant other, and it turns out that we have a full spectrum of valuable life connections that when we're both aware of it, we get great returns in our personal lives. We get love, and we get security, and other opportunities open up because you're aware of the connection that grows it into a relationship in a certain way. And I think that's true. I think that holds true for all connections. So any connection you have, I think the deeper you look into it and the nature of which you look at it. So if you combine sort of Kantian intention and what we know about quantum mechanics of the fact that our attention and the nature of our attention affects reality, it collapses a wave into a particle, and it actually literally makes the reality happen. Our conscious intention and our awareness on something actually makes the reality happen. And you combine that with the idea that you can apply that sort of powerful awareness and consciousness to your connections, then you can start to clearly see how placing your awareness and intention, or one's awareness and intention, onto a connection, which we have all connections because it's universal, and connections just being aware of the fact that there's underlying the material reality are these principal connections of cause and effect, these links of cause and effect. So us being connected to links of cause and effect and causation, that we've grown into a relationship by putting intentions and manifestations and all the principles of quantum mechanics into it. So we go from a connection into a relationship. And a relationship can be of any nature. It can be, you have a relationship with the horse you ride, the pets you raise, the kids you love, your significant other, your banker, uh, you know, your favorite YouTuber. Relationships can be anything, because relationships are you being conscious of the connections that we have in life in the chain of causation. Now, so the connections, which are really one-on-one of a particular, like a person and a particular subject. And you have relationships, which is the conscious intention to make it a more conscious part of your life with whatever you think you're getting in or out of it. And then to me, there's networks. And networks are when the person at the center of this link of causation that have relationships, and then when you become conscious of the bigger picture, the mosaic of relationships, and one can make a bigger picture of an overall social, economic, well, not like an ecosystem of relationships. So you could maybe take like, oh, keep it simple, right? Like, oh, I have like 20 friends who like fantasy football. I have relationships with 20 people who like fantasy football playing it. So we'll make a network out of that, and we'll make our own fantasy football league. And now it went from a series of relationships into a network. And that transformation can happen anywhere. It could be, I'm a person who has business, I have a bunch of business relationships. And if I decide to look at, now that I have all those, if I decide to grow those with the same mechanism that you took a connection to a relationship with, like intention and awareness and all those things, and you grow it into a relationship, now you do the same thing with a series of relationships, and you can grow it into a network. And then that network, and then you'll have a singular relationship with that network, but the network will act as a cell. You can call it a brain trust, you can call it whatever you want, or a system. I think it's easier to just call it a system. So the network is really a system. So you go connect, become consciously aware of relationships, and turn them into a network. And the network, and you do that by having honest and real knowledge and awareness of what is it that you think that the network will produce. Like, what's going to be the relationship of the in out, of the cause and effect with the network. And that network can be anything. It's a variable. It's whatever. That's where creativity comes in. That's where free will comes in. That's where your relationship with life itself comes in. Because at the end of it, to go circular, when you go from connections to relationships and networks, those are all very like narrowly focused in whoever the person is. However, when you come back full circle, knowing that, to connections, and you realize that connections is the universe and the life itself, allowing you to be in the links of causation in any way that can happen, and in ways that are already happening that we're totally unaware of. Some would say life is the path of finding out what those connections are one by one, or whatever, sequenced. But when you come back around, you go, okay, that's the process from growing from a connection to a relationship to a network. And you can come back and go, oh, well, that's me in the universe. It doesn't even have to be personal. Just, okay, I'm connected to this link of causation that we call life. And now that I've become aware of my relationship, I'm going to grow my connections with life into my relationship with life. And you realize, oh, life is just one big network. Like, it's philosophically true that it's just one huge network. So you have a connection, give it conscious energy, shape it, form it however it goes where it goes. And it's a two-way street. Oftentimes turns into a relationship. Series of relationships can become a network. And, network just lead you back into individual connections. And so gives you variety, gives you enjoyment, and connects you deeper to life, which hopefully, I think it's the idea of philosophy, a deeper connection and understanding to life. Anyway, that was today. I hope you found it helpful. Obviously, I'm not trying to tell anybody the way it is, or just, I'm just sharing some thoughts out here. So feel free to say whatever you like in the comments. Everybody's point is everybody thinks for themselves anyway. So hopefully we're starting a network. Hopefully we're aware that we're getting something in and out of this. That'd be nice. So today was, what's connection, relationship, and network, and how are they related? Hopefully you found this helpful, and I hope you have a great day.